Yeah, we're waiting to find out from the Spurs. Tony Parker is expected to have an MRI this morning to find out just how severe the injury is, as he was carried off in the fourth quarter with that knee injury. What would his absence mean for the Spurs, both short-term and long-term, through this postseason?
Well, let's start with short term because that's really what matters right now, and it'd be devastating. Reality is this: LaMarcus Aldridge has been a little bit of a no-show here in these playoffs. The fact is, Tony Parker has carried a lot of weight for them, a tremendous amount, more so than you figured that he would. We came into the playoffs worried about point guard being a weakness. Point guard hasn't been a weakness at all. Parker's played excellent. So losing Parker in this spot is really devastating to the Spurs. And with what I'm hearing on this injury and the severity of it, that they don't know obviously until they complete the MRI today. But Greg Popovich had said in the postgame it's not good. It doesn't appear like we would probably see Tony Parker again back in these playoffs. And that really puts a crimp in the Spurs title hopes, because the reality is this: Patty Mills is fine at that position and certainly can fill in for a half a game here and there. He's the quality of play that Parker was giving them, what he was doing off the bounce, the offensive threat that he was here so far in these playoffs is nothing that Patty Mills can replicate at this point. Parker was finding himself again in a really big way. So this kills the Spurs here short term. Long term, it actually hurts Tony Parker more than it hurts the Spurs. He's in the last year of a deal. The Spurs were potentially going to look in a different direction. I've heard rumblings that the Spurs had their eye on potentially getting Derrick Rose at a bargain number for next year and rolling the dice with him a little bit. So I'm not sure Parker was going to be back there either way, or if he was in more of a limited role. What this will do is the next contract that Parker was hoping to get, which will probably be his final contract in the NBA, there may not be an offer. Or if there is an offer, it's going to be a make-good offer to prove that you're healthy. So for the Spurs here long term, they may have been going in a different direction anyway. But for Tony Parker long term, this just, and Michael, when you talk about this potentially being the end of his career because he's at the end of a contract, that absolutely is a significant possibility here. And if it is, it'd be real sad for it to end this way for the kind of storied career and championship career that Tony Parker has had.
Yeah, absolutely. He's 34 years old. If he, let's just say, and we don't, this is pure speculation, obviously, if it's a serious knee injury where it might even knock him out for all of next season should he want to play, then we're talking about a 36-year-old point guard trying to make a comeback off a devastating knee injury. Although, again, that's all speculation. That said, too, as far as the short term is concerned, Geltzy, if he can't come back in this series, for example, or maybe even the next series should the Spurs advance, how much do you think we might see Kawhi Leonard playing a point forward role?
You will see some of it. I know this. Greg Popovich has always been comfortable using Manu Ginobili as a point guard on the floor. And with Kawhi there being as ball dominant as he's become, it becomes a lot easier to use Ginobili as a point guard because Kawhi is an excellent secondary ball handler. So I think from that standpoint, we will see more Ginobili here. And Ginobili played well last night. He looked good. The question becomes at Manu Ginobili's age, at 39 years old, can you come back here, even with nights off in the playoffs? Can you come back here game in and game out and be effective in that role? Patty Mills needs that support behind him. And Pop's depth is going to be severely, severely tested here. The other thing to look at is if Ginobili isn't really as effective as Pop would like him to be, if he doesn't have his legs underneath him, which is going to happen with a 39-year-old player in this type of playoff intensity, look for Pop to dust off Dejounte Murray. This is why Greg Popovich will extend his bench in the regular season and give guys looks that you don't normally see. Dejounte Murray had an excellent game on a Saturday night game against Cleveland and played 22 minutes in that game and played very well. He's got a mountain of speed. Is his maturity where it needs to be in terms of playing in these kind of big spots? I don't know. But when you look at Houston and the athleticism in their backcourt and what they bring at you, putting a premium athlete out there is going to help San Antonio a little bit. So you'll see some Ginobili there, some Kawhi Leonard. But I'm telling you right now, Pop's got confidence in the guys he develops in this system. They like Dejounte Murray a lot. You're going to see some Dejounte Murray in this series, and he may end up being a secret weapon and be pretty effective. Listen, there's going to be no substitute for Parker's offensive ability and for Parker's playoff experience and savvy. But if Murray can give you a little bit of a different look, why not? Listen, Greg Popovich has come too far here, done this too many times to throw in a towel with a major injury. They'll figure something out to stay competitive in this Houston series. I'm not sure they were beating Golden State either way, but watching Pop meet this challenge is going to be very, very interesting. Keep an eye on this kid, Murray, who I really think can play.
On the other side of the ball in this series, Houston fans are kind of scratching their heads as to why the offense went completely cold after lights out shooting, at least from the outside in game one. James Harden was invisible, had only 13 points, 3 of 17 from the field. What happened to James Harden?
Well, I don't know if anything happened to James Harden as much as the fact that they defended him really well. They rolled extra coverage at him. They tried to garner him in the mid-range a little bit. He had an off shooting night. James Harden's become the kind of player that is not going to force action if it's not there. And they kind of made him force action a little bit by defending him really, really well. Took away a lot of his passing lanes, took away a lot of his driving lanes. They made him their primary focus. You know, Harden likes to try to draw fouls at certain points in time. The Spurs were incredibly disciplined last night in not fouling him, which is really important when you're defending James Harden. They just did a really nice job against him. The other thing here is that in game one, when Houston shot the ball so well from three, San Antonio's transition defense was a train wreck. In the first quarter of that game, Houston, when they were behind in the game, hit a couple threes in a row in transition, one by Ryan Anderson in 2 possessions. Popovich called timeout and tore his guys to shreds, and the transition defense was much better after that. If San Antonio can defend Houston well at the arc in transition, they have a very good chance of winning this series. It sounds easy. It's hard to do with how frequently the Rockets get out and run. They're relentless in terms of pushing the pace and pushing the tempo, and they got a lot of good shooters that like to pull up on that line. So San Antonio adjusted well last night. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with Houston in game three, how much they can force tempo, and how disciplined San Antonio stays with what they do in transition defense.